Okay, that was Chainsaw Man, Season 1, Episode 8. Look, I've seen a couple TV shows.
Oh, there's only a couple?
I'm
only
in the
a handful.
process of watching Attack on Titan. I don't know what it will take, but a lot of me doesn't believe Makima's dead.
Or Kobeni, Arai, Fushi, the other members of the division, all of them. How could all of them be dead, you know? That could be the way it's going, but...
It's more believable that everybody else is dead and
Except Makima?
Yeah, for me.
That makes sense.
But I could see... I don't know what it's gonna take, though. Like, how do you, the vibe I'm getting is I don't think we got her name, but the girl who showed up at the latter part of the episode, in my mind, is the Makima
of some other organization.
Yeah.
Maybe the Yakuza.
Or whoever, or, you know, at the hands of the Gun Devil, or being operated or run by. So if that's the case, then I imagine Makima coming back, you know?
Yeah. I have a theory based on evidence that is normally shown when they kill characters. Especially when you're given a decent amount for all of these characters. You know, no character has really maybe shined more. Himeno and Makima may be on the same level a little bit, and then the other members of the 4th Division that we just saw get shot. But I think it is important to point out that only one character had evidence or a sign that they would truly be dead by the end of this episode. And that is, and I called upon it right after, it is the first dialogue I thought of, and it was Himeno saying, "Make sure you bring Aki and the Fiend and come over for breakfast sometimes."
Yeah.
And as soon as what happened, that is the first thing I thought of. I was like, oh, she said something that is like almost supposed to hindsight 2020. If I had read into that a little bit more, that's a sign.
There's like a little bit of foreshadowing.
It's a little bit of it, and we didn't get that for
way.
any of the other characters that were shot in this episode. So my current theory is that she's the only one that's truly dead.
I think that's a pretty good theory. I don't at all feel at the moment they'd bring Himeno back because of showing us seemingly her trump card and going all out and making that sacrifice for Aki and how it was handled.
And we learned that she wants to be with Aki too in this episode. We got so many...
Her saying it out loud and like saying the desire out loud of wanting to actually get with him, you know?
And she was going to make a deal with Denji to basically in this alliance together to help him with Makima.
God, I know it's an old meme, but like this whole episode is surprise Pikachu face for me. For at least the second half. This
was like the least bit bored I have felt in. I mean, like, I feel like everyone might be able to attest to this, but it's way easier to get bored in life, I would say, lately. And maybe it's just growing and growing for people everywhere, kids, everything. The amount that you are bored and how little things that might have super entertained me.
You're talking about attention being retained.
Yes. And I feel like that is across the board something that everyone could say that they've experienced lately to some degree. But this, I was like...
Dude.
This was so, like... There was, like, hardly any fight in this episode, but it was so, like, epic as if it was, like, wholly the most beautiful... fight scene, animated movement, and we got like a little bit, and of course that was like under the umbrella, but the whole episode was just like chef's kiss. Like, we're getting these amazing beautiful art shots, these angles. Like, how is it that you can show me the same exact scene you showed me at the ending of last episode, just in different angles and sometimes in reflections, and I'm still like, I feel like didn't even feel like a recap. Like, hey, this is what happened. Let's pick back up.
And that's because it wasn't a recap. It was a recap with intention of making us feel a certain way about a character
it was her POV.
Felt different about at the end of last episode.
Right.
And I think with the acknowledgement of, like, let's be real. Let's get straight to straight to the chase. There's a lot of like people that I don't necessarily agree with on TikTok and other places that were like cancel Chainsaw Man, underage, what like it's fiction, and you're supposed to write characters so that the audience feels certain ways about them. That's the whole point of writing fiction.
If every character was a virtuous, amazing character,
it'd be very hard to make a story entertaining and interesting.
It would be boring.
The fact that they addressed it, not only addressed it, but had Himeno be the one to say it after the fact makes you like, it shows me the intent that they put in, even recapping the point of view in the beginning of the episode and how they intentionally left off last episode. And it set the whole episode up to be a Himeno centric episode and a beautiful way to end potentially her life for good, you know?
Yeah. I loved how they phrased her kind of awareness of what could have happened and that it was bad, because the first thing out of her mouth about the situation is the phrase taken advantage of. She could have just been like, oh, like, oops, sorry, like brushed it off, not made it seem like it was a serious thing, or been like used less specific language about how the implications of that would be. She could have just been like, oh, did we do it, you know? But she specifically used that language, and I was so happy to hear that.
Well, and let's be real, it's fiction. They could have done that if the author wanted to.
Yes.
And that would have made me feel a certain way about Himeno.
Yes. But it wouldn't make me not want to watch the show.
Exactly. But I think that wrapping it back to the point that you were making a couple minutes ago was like having my attention, right? And we live in a world like with TikTok, with like other like we want to be stimulated, right? I couldn't imagine that 8 episodes into a series that you could play it like this, like on episode 8, like in a pacing sense, and it feel so good. And I wasn't out of it at all. I was completely in it, and they were taking their time to tell a story and make me feel a certain way, and it was so well done.
So you know how I almost felt like the pacing of this show and just the show's aesthetic is perfectly encapsulated by the opening. I feel like the opening of this show basically reflects how the show is actually storyboarded, and the audio and the shots you get, because there's that part where they're walking on the street and then it's kind of like glitched out and then they're walking again, and I feel like that is exactly how all of the episodes feel to me. They are so focused on this aesthetic of this world. The art is top notch. The storyboarding is creative, and none of it is just basic front facing stills. Like everything is creative. They switch it up in every single scene, and the audio is perfect for what it should be, from being inside a train car to right outside the train car next to the tracks with little like weeds blowing in the wind.
It's too early for me to say what I feel about the story of Chainsaw Man, and I don't want to take anything away from the manga since I haven't read it, but I can easily say, in my opinion, the best animation studio when it comes to editing is by far Mappa, in my experience. Like everything, like the sound design was so good, all the cuts, it
was a full-bodied, balanced viewing experience. It was a hearing experience, and it was a viewing experience.
Man, there was just like a couple things, like I had touched on it like 25 seconds into the episode, you have just like light shadow that's moving of the curtain, just like, you know, cool. You touched on her tank top like falling down
for some
a little
reason
bit on
that
her
was
shoulder.
like, I loved that so much.
The reflections in the bathroom. In my family's house, actually, they have the same style mirror with like 3 different pieces that either end folding out, and like just playing with those angles. To have one of them
slightly out too, to show us the other like reflection of her, I'm like,
well, they did it right. Like it's they didn't have to do it, but they didn't
have to do it. It doesn't give us anything. It doesn't tell us any more narratively.
Yeah.
It's just so creative and beautiful. Like, like so many of the shots, they didn't need to show us Himeno on top of Denji, but in this little tiny mirror that's like on her dresser. They didn't need to show us that. They could have just shown us her from like the same angle or similar to what they had in the last episode. But no, it shows excitement and love to me, and maybe it's how maybe the manga goes into Himeno's POV to do the same scene but through her. Maybe that's how it is in the manga. Either way, the storyboarding there is so creative, and I am in love with it.
You know what the emotion that it gives me, like the impression of from the animation studio, from the mangaka. The emotion, the impression I get is confidence. Like, it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, and I have intent with what I'm doing. I'm gonna let it linger and let it sit, because this is my intent. Like, it's like, they're not trying to skip through and, like, you know, speed run any storyline or story
If I ever found out that this mangaka wasn't the most confident in their art, in their story person out there, I would be surprised.
Yeah.
It seems like a person that knows what they want to create and how they want to do it and how they want to tell this story, and they think it's good. They feel love for it, and they think that it's successful, and that's how it feels. Like, I love that you brought up the word confidence, because that is
you feel it, right? I don't want to beat a dead horse, so I'll stop just being like, oh, what a great episode, and I'm really into the show. I do want to talk about a little bit of the story progression and like, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm not confident enough to say that I 100% know what's going on in every aspect or every detail. A lot was happening, and I was trying to figure out a lot of things like Aki and how his curse devil or sword works.
Right, we kind of got some facts, especially there at the end, that all kind of came in such a quick succession of a time where we were paying attention maybe more closely to some other things that were happening on screen, and definitely we need to talk about them. I'm honestly surprised here that Denji's the only one reacting to this man talking to them while they're eating. He's the only one that seems to feel a suspicion enough to turn and stop eating, and I was surprised by that as it was happening.
Well, like, I wonder if he turned and started listening to him because of the relation.
He said Yakuza.
And
he had already turned to listen to him, and the word Yakuza, I feel like, gave Denji a more, he was more interested in what this man had to say.
Yeah. Was that it? Because Denji's not looking at him yet, right? And then he says,
because he hasn't, I don't think he said it yet.
My granddad took me to the fancy places. Food was really good.
And then
he was a Yakuza. Correct. Okay.
Right when that happens, Denji seems to actually pull his whole attention toward this guy.
So, like, obviously,
he even has like an inquisitive eyebrow.
Obviously, yes, he does, because obviously he has the ties to the Yakuza. He was trying to pay off his father's debt, of 1.2 mil. But, like, so Denji's interested in, like, just the content of what he's having to say.
More than interested, he's
intrigued.
And even maybe confused of why this man is saying all of this right now. He's
like, why would somebody be openly talking about my family being in the Yakuza?
Yes.
Like,
I think he is already a little bit suspicious. Especially if you think about his love of food.
Yeah.
Denji's not going to stop eating unless he's incredibly either suspicious or interested in what this man is saying.
No, you're very right. That's a really good point. Maybe he's like, why would somebody be taught, like, this doesn't seem right. Just he has like an internal gut, hunch. So he's telling him about his own experience with his grandfather, right? Mm-hmm. And then he shows the picture to Denji and says, you loved him too, didn't you, Denji? Mm. What's your takeaway here, if any?
Well, first I'm going to say that maybe Denji, and this is just back on what you said, right, what we were talking about right before, is that maybe Denji, since he's probably the only one out of this group that has spent a significant amount of time with the Yakuza.
Yeah.
So that could also be a point of evidence of why he might more immediately pay attention to this man or be wary of him, even before he, like, as soon as he mentions that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do I think of you loved him too, didn't you, Denji?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got mad when he said that, because I was like, that old fart sucked.
Yeah.
Like, Denji's life was horrible. Like, but the sad thing is we know that as a kid, Denji probably did have some love toward this old man because it was the only person that really fed him or gave him anything. And even if he was treated horribly, it was still the only person that spoke to him.
In Denji's mind, it was like a way to progress, like an option, not just death, right? Or not just being abandoned. There was somebody there.
There was somebody there that he could, that could help him get or give him the things he needed if he worked hard enough to a place that he wanted to be. And so there had to be some, especially as a child losing both of your parents, he was completely alone of like, this was the only human that truly like spoke to him or did or gave him anything. And so yes, that's why I got mad when I read that, because I was like, oh, he probably did have a little bit of like some type of affection toward that old man because of the fact that he was willing to give Denji little pieces of candy or whatever as food. And like, oh, look, he'll eat anything, sure. But still, he gave Denji something to eat. She said something that is like almost supposed to hindsight 2020. If I had read into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
She said something that is like almost supposed to hindsight 2020. If I had read into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That is like almost supposed to hindsight 2020.
That is like almost supposed to hindsight 2020.